Hi, this is Steve Riley. Welcome to this episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Today, I want to talk to you. There's no guest, just you and me. And I want to talk about what to do when you feel like you're failing everywhere. It's one of those times in your life where you feel like no matter how hard you push, it still feels like you're just failing at home, at work, and in life. And you're giving it everything you've got, but somehow it's not enough. The feeling is just so frustrating. Now, in certain situations, it doesn't really feel like you're going anywhere. And in fact, you feel like you're going backwards. Now, in life, a little bit of failure is good. It teaches you something. That's normal. Like it's a soreness after a workout. It's proof that you're stretching, learning, getting stronger. However, there's another kind where it goes from a soreness to feeling like a chronic injury. And the failure stops being specific in one area of life and it starts feeling global, like you're failing at something little at work, but now you feel like you're failing everywhere. That's not growth pain anymore. That's oxygen loss. That makes you feel like you're suffocating. That's a moment when everything, your system, your strategies, your schedule can't carry the weight of your life anymore. And you feel like you can't either. Usually what happens here is people try to push harder. They try to go farther, faster, but they're really feeling like they're drowning. And what you need to do is take a moment and apply what I call the CPR solution to your life. So let me talk to you a little bit about this. Frustration and failure are signs of growth. And before we move further, you are listening to a show called Great Practice, Great Life. So you should have some level of frustration. You are aiming high, you lead teams, you take on responsibility, and you're really trying to grow. Failure and frustration are going to be a natural byproduct of that growth. Now, sometimes you're going to feel like you're not failing and you're not stretching. It's usually because you're not taking enough risk. You're hanging out in a comfort zone. That's normal. However, really what I want to be able to distinguish is this type of overwhelming failure that Kay is dealing with. So let's talk about what failing really means in this situation where it feels like a chronic condition. So if you're trying to catch your breath in a workout, that's normal, right? That's normal. You're stretching your lungs, you're stretching your body, you're stretching your muscles. However, the chronic condition where you feel like you're just stressed to the max and you're skipping the workouts, you're skipping the good things for you, you're skipping taking care of yourself is really what I'm focused on. So let's talk about what failure means. I want you to consider that as a human being, you cannot fail. What you can do is use strategies that fail. As a human being, you don't fail. What you have are strategies that aren't working. So the first thing I want you to be clear about that you're actually pretty great the way you are. What's not working for you right now is certain strategies aren't giving you the results that you're looking for. Failure is ultimately feedback. So, for example, if I'm trying to lose weight and I'm not losing weight, I can't look at myself and say, wow, Steve, you're a real failure. What I need to do is back up and say, okay, what are the strategies I'm trying to do to lose weight? I see eating cheeseburgers and bourbon is not a great weight loss strategy. So I need to take a different approach. I can't outwork that particular problem. So I have to back up and try a different strategy. Now, in life, when you're struggling and you feel like you're failing everywhere, I want you to take a breath and say, okay, I'm not failing. My strategies are. Now, it's important to understand because people usually don't see it that way. They fall into three traps quickly. And this is where smart people get stuck. Three constant traps I've seen over and over and over. One, not enoughing. And this is where they're not good enough. They're not strong enough. They're not smart enough. They're not whatever enough. And they start to feel shame and they look inward and they blame themselves for what's not working in life. Not good enough is a common thing among high achievers. I see this and I hear this all the time. I suffer from it. So we're all part of the I'm not good enough club. but it's a self-blame strategy. So first thing you want to do is when you catch yourself saying that, recognize that it's a distraction. It's a procrastination strategy. It's actually not an actual strategy for changing the outcome. So if you're not good enough, you need to scratch your head and say, okay, it's not that I'm not good enough. Something about my strategies aren't working. So we need to back away from you and look at the strategies. 2, blaming. This is where we push outward. It's my team, my clients, the spouse, economy, it's the president, it's this, it's that, it's the other thing. You're always going to look for an outward blame. Once again, it distracts you and it's a procrastination strategy because anger feels decisive, but it really blocks your ability to reflect and learn. And trap 3, which is the one I like the least, but I see used the most, shrinking your future. This is usually when people go, well, maybe I'm not the type of person that does this. Maybe I am not ambitious. Maybe I lack the genes. Maybe I lack the intellect. Maybe I don't have these things. Therefore, what I need to do is reduce the size of my goals. My goals are too big. My future's too big. And really what you're doing is having a nervous system that's stressing out. And it's saying, hey, look, all this stuff is really hard on us. So let's reduce the size of our future. I like to call this the shrinking future trap because what you start to do is you just shrink your future to the size of frustration and pain you can tolerate, which is a very sad thing because you're controlling your own ceiling. You're really dropping your capabilities to the anxiety and pain and frustration you can tolerate. Once you recognize it's just an emotional response to not getting what you want, your strategies aren't working, you can push that out of the way and really look and say, where are my strategies failing? So those are the 3 traps I've seen over and over and over. So my commitments have outgrown my calendar. What do I do? How do I change my pot? How do I do all this? And that's where the CPR conversation comes in. This is a technique I use with my clients all the time. The CPR solution is about reviving your life, restoring your focus, and restarting your momentum. I based it off the CPR in medicine, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. It's really where somebody's having a heart attack or choking or whatever. You're really going to apply CPR compressions to their chest, mouth to mouth breathing to help keep blood flowing, open the airway, restore breathing until help can arrive. Now, it's easy to see somebody having a medical emergency. It's almost impossible to see somebody having a CPR issue in their life. They can feel it. Some of you might be able to see it, but in life, it's very hard to distinguish when you're like, okay, I think I'm having a medical emergency. That is when you feel like you're failing everywhere. So when you feel like you're failing everywhere, it's time to put some CPR on your life. So here's how this works. C stands for cut. You're going to have to prune certain things in your life. These are zombie projects, bad clients, places that you've over volunteered, relationships that you've outgrown. So you're going to have to take a moment to cut certain things, prune, trim the dead wood. As you've grown, there are certain commitments that you've made that don't work for you anymore. And you have to distinguish what those are. Number 2, P, protect. Protect is different because there's some things in life you absolutely need to protect. You need to guard oxygen so you can breathe. So in your calendar, in your life, how do you do this? How do you do this? So, and it's hard to do it when you're overwhelmed. If you feel like you're drowning, your goal is to get your head above water, not to swim for the shore. So protection requires certain things happening at certain times. For me, when I'm coaching a client, the first thing I see them sacrifice is sleep. So the biggest thing I usually recommend to people that are in a state where they feel like they're failing everywhere is to get sleep. I know. It's easy for me to say, but it's the first thing that I personally have a problem with. If I'm feeling like I'm failing everywhere. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I can't sleep. I'm up at 2 o'clock in the morning. You have to do two things immediately. Start getting up at the same time every morning and going to bed at the same time every night. You have to start prioritizing sleep. 3, refocus. So our R is for refocus. Our goal here is to get you to breathe again and refocus your energy and time. Now, usually for me, that could be everything from doing a 5-minute to 15-minute planning for the day. It could be everything from saying, okay, I'm spending too much time on the wrong things. I need to do the right things. So there's a lot of different things that you can refocus on in your life.